Welcome to the Business Women Australia podcast show, the podcast that brings together industry leaders to discuss the latest trends, insights and strategies. So sit back and relax, let's get inspired by the amazing women who are shaping the future of professional women in Australia. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
So welcome to the Business Women Australia podcast show. I'm Lynn Hawkins, the National Director of Business Women Australia, and we're streaming live across LinkedIn, YouTube, Meta, and you will find us on your favourite platform, whatever that is. It could be Spotify or iTunes, YouTube, and of course you can find our recordings of podcasts and webinars on our website. So before we start, just like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the Noongar Nation in which I'm streaming from today, and pay my respects to elders past, present, and those that are emerging. And I'm super excited today to have my fabulous Belinda von Knoll, who's a leader in Business Women Australia and a wonderful woman who I'm grateful to call my friend. She's on the show today to talk about planning for a wise retirement. And as a private wealth advisor, who better is there than to talk about this type of topic? A very timely topic for me, I have to say, because I'm heading into the big 6-0 next year. And I probably should have been thinking about this probably a lot longer ago, but I'm super keen to hear about Belinda's views, because we were discussing this when we were preparing for this show. And we realised that it doesn't matter if you're in your 30s, your 40s, your 50s. In fact, the earlier you start thinking about what kind of retirement you want to have, or if you don't want to have it as a traditional retirement, what does that look like? So this is a really important listen, even for those of you who might be thinking, that sounds like it's a long way away. So we're going to cover some things like why retirement planning might be a little bit different for women. I'm going to pick Belinda's brains around a self-managed super fund, because that's actually an area of expertise she has. And I know that over my life, I've had a few accountants that have suggested we do one, and we didn't. We stuck with our industry funds. So we'll have a little bit of a chat around that. And we'll be looking at key strategies to maximise your financial future. So that's why the younger, the better you are listening to this. But it's also not too late if you're like me and starting to think about, wow, it's not that far away and I haven't even worked out what I'm going to do when I grow up. That's okay. We're going to delve into all that stuff. So hang on the show or catch up and listen if you can only catch bits and pieces, because I know with LinkedIn, you're probably at work or doing some work, but just have us on in the background if you can. So she's absolutely one of the most highly regarded financial advisors in Australia. And I know that for a fact, because I've been following Bee's career for a very long time, and she's just getting awards. I don't know how big your pool room is, Belinda, but you've been getting a lot of awards, and I'm sure they go straight to the pool room. You've got a Bachelor of Arts in Comparative Literature and a Graduate Diploma in Financial Planning. And I find that really interesting, because I think that arts background has actually served you really well, not just in your appreciation of arts, but just the way you look at the whole person and the story behind them. I guess that's been a bit of a superpower for you, Bea.
Thank you, Lynn. Once again, you're always really kind in the words you say about me, and I think you might be one of my biggest fans, which is lovely, so thank you. I appreciate the support. I also want to mention that I'm 60 next year as well, so it's all very relevant for both of us. I think a really interesting way to start the conversation is my background in doing the comparative literature side. I think there's not enough women in financial planning, and I think we have a huge role to play. But I think the thing that makes you a good financial planner is actually being able to understand human beings and have an understanding of what makes them tick and what their goals and dreams and what they're trying to achieve is, rather than the actual financial figures. I mean, I think that the figures is more of a given, that we work on that. But, having the ability to be more empathetic and listen to people and really listen to them so that you're talking to them as an individual is a huge skill set. And I think women more naturally have it. to me, this job is a dream job because I get to use both sides of my brain. Um, I I really enjoy people. I love making people happy. I love seeing them eyes light up when you explain something that they've never understood before and they suddenly realize they can achieve their goals. But then it's also fun to go away and do the calculations and work out the more technical side. So, for younger women out there who are perhaps considering a career, I'd highly recommend they look into financial planning as something that can use different sets of their skills, and challenge them in a different way.
And what got you into financial planning? I mean, to leave with a degree in comparative arts and end
Mm.
up in financial planning, how did you get there?
I have a completely accidental career in that I did a degree in comparative literature without actually thinking whether it would get me employed. It turned out that I graduated right when we were having, a bit of a problem with getting jobs. It was a slow period here. And I did a computer programming course whilst I was looking for work and got hired by AMP in their graduate program because they were installing a new computer system. I have to say IT is not my skill set, so I still find that really strange that that happened. And then I got chickenpox on day one, had to take 2 weeks off, and when I came back, that had been delayed, and they threw me into the corporate superannuation area, and that literally started my career. I felt I had to have a job, I had to learn something, so I started studying in that area and have literally done all the study, including my graduate diploma of financial planning, have all been done, later in life, as part of my job. So it was an accidental career, and I worked at AMP for 8 odd years in more of the employer superannuation area, and went away to the UK for a year, came back, and one of the guys I dealt with said, "I think you'd be a good financial planner," and he gave me a job. So,
Amazing.
a completely accidental career.
Well, for those of you who are listening to this, please don't wait for things to fall out of the sky. This is actually highly unusual, but placing yourself into positions where you probably just took something and trusted that at least this job is
Yeah.
going to be a stepping stone to something. It might not be the ideal job for you, but you've got to take what you can in order to look around. I love that because I think sometimes, I know I see it in my own children. They really are keen to do this other thing or not this. And
Yeah.
sometimes I say, start something, get in there, have a look around, because even if that job isn't the ideal job, if you do your best at it, other things can come your way.
You can learn so much by giving things a go and suddenly realize what you didn't think was for you can be really good. I often make the joke, I've literally only been employed by 2 people. So AMP for 8 odd years, and then I've been here for 25 years now, and yet my job has evolved so much and I've done so many different things and it's constantly still changing. So I've never been bored. And there's been lots of opportunities that have come from just by giving it a go. I also make the joke that I don't think I'm Einstein. I'm not, a genius in any way, shape, or form, but all I do is work hard. And, you can just do so much by just persevering. Um, and I work hard because I love it. So, that you've got to be in a job that you love, but it's just turning up and doing all the right things, and it gives you opportunities.
That is awesome. And look, you're actually a specialist self-managed super fund advisor and a secretary for the WA branch of the Self-Managed Superannuation Fund Association. So I'm really interested in what inspired you to then specialise in the retirement planning and SMSFs.
It's a combination of things. So when I first started out in financial planning, there wasn't actually a lot of options in the retail or industry type funds. They were a little bit inflexible. You couldn't have your own investment choice. They were quite expensive. And so self managed super funds became the flavour of the month, and everyone had one. Not necessarily in the long run the right idea. And I find it interesting that you've considered it a few times. I I have one myself, and I am involved in the Self-Managed Super Fund Association. I think they have a really good role for the right people, but I also know that I'm going to wind mine up when I retire. So my thinking has evolved a lot over the years. I think we now have a lot of flexibility in retail super funds, and it's more that you've got to have an interest in what you've got and understand what you've got. The reason I now have a more nuanced view on them is because I deal with a lot of retired people. And what happens as you get older is, one, you don't want the work. Two, sometimes you lose the capacity. They're not as easy to manage when you get older for lots of different reasons. So, I think they have a really important role, especially with people who have businesses. It's an opportunity that perhaps they can grow their business by having a business property in them. So there is still a very important role, but they come with responsibility. And a lot of people think it's just the investing, but there's a lot of compliance. The ATO is now very on top of making sure people understand their role as a super fund trustee. So we've just got to be a little bit more careful now that the right people get them and that they're actively interested. And, I have people who walk in who say, I want to set up a self-managed super fund. And I say, what do you have now? And they don't even know that. And I'm like, if you don't even understand what you've got, I'm not sure you've got the right skill set. So it's
Yeah,
more nuanced than what it used to be. So I've still got
absolutely.
lots of them. There's still really good, effective structures for certain people, but I'm very careful that people understand that their responsibility comes with it. And you do have to
Well,
think about later in life and whether you want to be on holidays or running a super fund.
yeah, and if you like that, I've got a brother-in-law who's just perfect to run his own super fund,
Because he
and
enjoys it. Yeah.
he loves it, and he's been doing it all his life, and he's brilliant
Yeah.
at it, and
Yeah.
he's the complete opposite to me. I would be irresponsible, forget about it, go, "Oh, sugar, I probably should have been doing something more about that." I mean, you've known me through Shadforth Financial Group, partnering with Business Women Australia for so many years. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm just so busy and I'm all over the place.
Yeah.
It would just
Exactly.
I'd be the worst person in the world to have a self-managed super fund.
I think that you've hit the nail on the head. You got to know who you are and what you're trying to achieve. So, as I said, that there were the only option for a while that made sense. Now there's lots of options out there, and it's a different answer for every single person. So, like
Yeah,
everything in
yeah.
life, yeah,
I felt a bit, jelly belly when some of my friends were buying properties inside their self-managed super funds and this and that. And I was like, oh, well, I'll just buy property and negative gear it, which
yeah,
served us as it was, because I could get my head around
exactly,
that. I could set and forget. I'd rather deal with a tenant
yeah,
because I'm a people person. So that worked well for me. So tell
yeah.
me, what is retirement planning? And why is it especially important? I mean, when we talk about, a lot of people don't even know what retirement planning means. So,
Yep.
and I'm very interested that you've found the challenges for women quite different than men. So tell me about that.
Yeah, so look, to be honest, I think it's very simple. When you're employed, someone pays you a salary, and that's what you live off. When you're retired, you've actually got to live off something. So retirement planning is figuring out what you need to be able to save, to be able to live comfortably. Um, it's it's a different answer for every single person because we all have different lifestyles and things that we value. So working out what you need to make you happy and what you want to have in retirement, and then working out if you have the money that you can do that, or whether you need to start spending a little bit less now or work a little bit longer, or what your options are. So I think the most important thing about retirement planning is knowledge, of understanding who you are and what you're trying to do. And there's the financial side of it. Like the biggest thing I see when people come in is they don't actually know what they spend. And if you lead a comfortable lifestyle now and you go, that's what I want in retirement, we need to know how much you spend to be able to work out if you've got enough money. So it's just understanding where you sit so that you can then make informed choices. I think it is difficult for women. Historically, women don't have to, sorry, I forgot to have children myself, but a lot of women do have kids so that they take time off, which then affects how much they're able to save. Um, again, it's not one size fits all. I think the world's changed a lot, and now the guys do a lot more work as well. Though I do hear the stats that women still do more housework, so that does worry me. Um, I think there's still a pay gap. I think a lot of women tend to go into caring roles, which tend to get paid less. So it's probably more important for women, especially if you're by yourself. And I'm not just talking about if you don't get married or if you choose to stay single, but sometimes people get divorced later in life. There's some complexity there for women. There's still a little bit of that attitude of one person looks after the finances, and sometimes that's not the lady. I think when you said about when do you start, I think we need better financial literacy at school, and I think we should be starting from the beginning. Of just understanding. You know, I make the joke all the time. I like to buy lots of shoes and nice, colourful jackets, as you can see. You know, it's a choice, isn't it? How much do I spend now? And then what do I want to do in retirement? Again, I make the joke with people, what I'm trying to achieve is making sure that they don't all have to move in with me because I've only got one spare bedroom. So we've got to have enough money saved so people can have a very comfortable life in retirement. And the sooner you start looking at it, the easier it is.
And it is a challenge. I mean, I would probably be the typical kind of executive. I was, earning all this money. I had bought my home. I had a great little share portfolio thanks to the influence of a great financial planner at KPMG at the time, Ted Thacker. Thank you, Ted. I sold those to marry my husband. I paid off closed his bank account that he owed money to. We got pregnant very quickly, and then I said to him, I'm going to have to leave KPMG because I want to spend time with my baby more than 3 months, which they'd very generously offered to hold my job. So we ended up in the country, and of course, for an executive, I had to shift my thinking around, wow, I'm now Patrick's mum, Simon's wife. In fact, but no one asked me anything about me.
No.
And my super took such a hit. I mean, even in those days, I don't even know really, the super was pretty pathetic. But I had 8 years and then came back and started up my own business when we came back to Perth after being all this time in the country. We did the whole thing. Set up my own business and never paid myself super out of my own business practice. It wasn't until I was back in corporate when my fourth baby was in grade 1. So 4 children back and playing catch up. Simon's superannuation is extraordinary compared to mine. And I often thought, gee, I'm glad, we didn't split up when we thought about it because it's, we'd be fighting over his super in the courts, and this is what happens. This is the reality.
Yeah, and look,
it's tough.
Sorry, go ahead.
And business owners don't pay
tough.
super. Yeah. Paying self and paying a super is so important as a business owner, right?
It is. You've sort of got to think about diversification and making sure that you're planning for the future, and not everything works out. So, having a bit of a safeguard is really important. The worst thing you can do for your financial planning future is get divorced. It makes it hard on both sides to start again. The good thing is that these days there's a lot of safeguards around making sure things do get equalised if people do get divorced. So I don't want to sound doomsday and suggest everyone does, but at least there are some safeguards there. So you would get some of his super, Lynn. But easier to stay married.
Absolutely. Well, lucky I got over that problem. I said to him the other day, I'm so glad I didn't divorce you and I had that one idea. Love him to bits.
Yeah.
So, like, at what stage? So the earlier the better, you're saying, for women to start planning for retirement. But does that mean going and chatting to someone like you that can say, what can I do now to understand and start building my wealth?
Yeah, look, I think knowledge, as I said, is power. So, yes, come and talk to someone like me. What's made it complicated these days to be honest is that there's now a cost associated around seeing someone like me that is sometimes is not appropriate for everyone. We talk to everyone though. We always have an initial meeting that is at no cost, and there's sometimes I can give suggestions to people. If younger people come in and say, am I at the stage where I need financial planning advice, I can say, look, it's not actually in your best interest. I can't add enough value for you at the moment to charge our fee, but go away and keep chipping away at your mortgage. You can make some suggestions to get people on the right track. I also think there's a lot of really good resources out there, and even things like the government Money Smart website has things like budgets on it. It has, little calculators that you can use. There's knowledge in there. There's great books out there, the Barefoot Investors talked about all the time, but and it's different for each person what clicks with them. But there's a lot of stuff we can do. Look at your super statement. One of the best things you can do if you're 20 years old is have your super in a high growth investment. You can't touch it for 30, 40 years. Let it grow. So there's things everyone can do, from seeing a financial advisor or just starting to open their eyes a little bit and look at what they've got. Think about things like, I buy a cup of coffee every day or 2 cups of coffee, and that $10 a day, how much does that add up to over a year? Is that what's really important to me? Which for me, trust me, it is, Lynn, because otherwise I don't function. But for someone else, they might go, I'd rather pay off my mortgage because then I can retire a year earlier. So there is lots of things people can do.
There is. And look, for those young people who are experiencing an incredible wealth episode in their lives, and there are many, and, kudos to them, but please, because you're young doesn't mean you've got your whole life ahead of you to sort that out down the track. I'm meeting a lot of young people who are getting an inheritance or getting a dividend from their family office or all this sort of stuff. And this is the time to really look at how you can become financially astute so that your children also learn how to manage money in a really responsible way and see their wealth as something as being a steward of that wealth, so that it doesn't be that sort of issue. We talk about shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations. Well, I'm learning a lot around being these families and talking about money with my own kids. We know we're in that kind of level of wealth, but this is my suggestion to other parents is it's not in bad taste to talk about money and where our investing is, because if we don't share it with our children, our knowledge, what we're learning, even the stuff ups, like we've made a few silly errors with some things, and sharing those discussions and having a laugh and what did we learn about it is really good.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. As I said, I think it should be starting at school. I think if it's in the home, even better. And there's you see lots of great things, where people, when they're bringing up kids, where they're going, look, I'm going to pay you for doing chores, or if you want this, you're going to have to save this. Just starting little things add up over time. So I think we should talk more about money at home.
Yeah, I do too. So what's the biggest misconception people have about retirement and superannuation?
So retirement, the one that I find is that people have these ideas in their head that they've seen from the media, I need to have X number of dollars, $1 million, otherwise you can't retire. It's not true, because every single person lives on a different amount of money that makes them happy. That is their lifestyle, and you will have people who go, I need, $30,000 a year to live on, versus someone who says, I need $300,000 a year to live on. Whatever amount is needed is what determines how much you need to save and how long you need to work. So it's not an exact dollar amount. And I think you need to understand what you spend, understand what you need to be happy, to live that dream that you have of what you want in retirement, and then get someone to help you work out the mathematics. I've had people walk in the door very stressed about whether they can retire, and when we've done the financial modelling, we can easily show them they've already achieved their goals and they just don't realise it. So it's understanding what you spend is probably the starting point. And by that, I don't just mean the essentials. I also mean, if your lifestyle is, I want to take a holiday every year, we need to build all that in. There's other people who go, hey, that doesn't interest me. If I can live in a house on the beach and go sailing each day, I'll be happy. Whatever the answer is, we need to work from what you need to work out if you're already there or what you can do to get there.
And so for women...
Sorry, I should go back. And the superannuation one, because you asked what the misunderstanding with that was. The main thing that I find with superannuation is people somehow think it's an investment. It is invested, but that's not why superannuation is popular. It is something that is recommended because it's a good tax structure. So it's getting people to understand that it's tax effective when they're saving in it, and then it's completely tax-free in the majority when people are retired, and that's why it's a good thing to have and a good thing to build, not the investing bit. That's the secondary part of it. So that's a common misconception.
Yeah, right. Okay. Yeah, that is a common misconception, particularly now as there is some financial literacy growing. So then there's this expectation it's a vehicle for investing, a safe vehicle.
Yeah, and look, you have to invest within it. Don't get me wrong, but you can invest exactly the same external to superannuation. So people sort of see it as though it's a unique investment. It's not the investment itself, it's the tax benefits that make a huge difference. And to be honest, the thing I also like about it, which is also its biggest disadvantage, is you can't touch it until you retire. But I like it because as much as we love to say, we can look after ourselves and we can save, not all of us can. It's a bit like I can't resist the chocolate. Sometimes you need to understand who you are, and super is a really good way of saving in a way that you can't touch and protecting your future. Can't touch until you retire, I should say.
Yeah, that's gold, isn't it? Because it comes back down to everything that you were saying at the beginning around the human in front of you and their unique goals, dreams, habits, their personality. It's all going to affect their plan. Every plan is different.
Yep. Every single client who walks through the door, we are starting from a different position as to what's important to them, what makes them tick, what they understand, how they need to structure their plan to meet their eventual goals. And I've got people who will ring me before spending a single cent because they know that they need to cross-check their decision making, because they're perhaps a little bit spendthrifty.
So it's an interesting one too, because you actually then are acting as a bit of an accountability buddy too.
Yeah, very much so. And I mean, we hold I often say, and I've had clients say this a lot, that what they value about us is we're a good sounding board. We do hold them accountable because they're having to tell us what they've done each year. If the money's disappeared and we're like, where's the savings? What's happened? So we do hold them accountable. But it's also a really safe zone because everything we talk about is private. They know we can't tell anyone what they're saying. So you also become a counsellor. They tell you everything about their lives and their, things that stress them or things that make them happy or worries about their kids or but it is, it's a huge honour to be able to be in that position where you can be a sounding board for people and, they can cross-check their decision making and etc. and, have someone that they can vent to and know that no one else can hear about it. So, yeah, I love that side of the job.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes people cross the lines and I go, that one's definitely not on my checklist, being able to help with that one.
Oh, like I can just see that, the heart of your practice is that passion for helping others, and what you are driven by, I can pick it up in the words it uses, this sense that they are going to get around that security and what they're living a life with purpose through this financial plan. It's such a there's so much more to it than the numbers, as you said.
Yeah, it's interesting. We do each year a client survey, and it's done for a couple of different reasons. One, it's really good to get feedback from clients that sometimes they might not want to say it to your face. Hopefully they do, because you're obviously working on building that relationship. I think some of the feedback's from my boss to make sure I'm staying accountable. But what's fascinating is when you look at it across the board, what people value is like things like investment returns are very, very low down on the scale. It's always peace of mind, knowing I can achieve my goals, knowing I've got my life under control. It's all those softer things that people value the most out of the service we offer. So it's quite fascinating. I mean, you still have to do the investments, don't get me wrong, but it's not the number one driver for them.
And that's probably indicative of the surprise that they are getting from all those aspects of feeling that you've got their back and you understand them and you're holding them to be able to fund all the things that are important to them in their lives.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So for those sorts of women that were like me and have had these long career breaks, or even short ones, and they have had this sort of break in their superannuation, what are the sorts of tactics and strategies they can put in place?
Yeah, look, it's hard because, there has been the break. There's little things that you can, like the sooner you start, as we talked, can make a difference. So if you can do simple things like, even if you can put $1,000 a year into your superannuation, the government will match that by $500. It doesn't sound a lot, but it really adds up over time. Just starting to do small things, work out small achievable goals. Doing something is better than nothing. There's not a magic thing that suddenly when you go back to work, you're going to, win the lottery and be able to build up your super. So you probably need to manage expectation as well, that you're just going to gradually peck away at it and try and build your savings. I think, and I know this is really, really boring, but going back to that budget side of things, I've found over my whole life, as I get paid more, I spend more. That's not always necessarily intelligent spending. I just do it because I can. So I think as you get back into work and you suddenly have a decent income coming in, you've got to start squirreling away some of it to save for your retirement and to, I'm a big believer that when you get paid, funnel money directly into a separate account for saving. Have your emergency fund set aside for things, unexpected contingencies. Try and pay off if you can afford it and you own a house and you can pay a bit more, pay it off. You can use an offset account so that is your emergency fund as well. Get a little bit extra into super if you can. Invest that in a higher growth investment so that can be your risk within your super and by risk, I mean it's just going to grow more over time because it's more in shares, versus, the money that you've got in your offset account, that's your defensive investment. Small things, just chipping away, taking an interest in it. Have a look at your super fund. Is it what are the fees? Is it an appropriate one? I mean, it's a lot better than it used to be because they're all looked at very carefully these days. So it's more competitive, but have a little look and just keep chipping away.
Yeah, it's that comes down to that. Today is the best day to start doing these things that you just listed.
Just start.
Five or six amazing strategies that are not difficult to do. making sure you've set up your account, your everyday account as an offset account or whatever, wherever you get your salary put in, make that your offset account and set up your buckets. You said they're a emergency fund account, a savings account, do your budget planner, download from the from the My Money government budget. That was one of the first things I did when I think the first time I heard you say that. That was a game changer. Honestly, Simon and I did not realise how much money we were spending.
Yeah, really common, Lynn. Probably
things.
Yeah. And some of them, as I make the joke about my coffee, some are non-negotiable and it'll be different for each person. But sometimes you just look at it and go, hang on a minute, you know, if I didn't do that, then I could have that dream holiday. You know,
well,
so
that's right. Yep. It's when you think about it, $1,000 a year, if you bring that down to a day, that's not much really that to put aside that you wouldn't even notice, you know, $20 a day.
Yeah, and exactly right. And so those super, as I said, you can't touch it until you retire. You know, if you, you know, went, okay, $100, you know, a fortnight from my pay goes directly into it. Over 20, 30 years, that's going to make a huge, huge difference. So if you're the sort of person who goes, hey, if I put it in my bank account, I'm going to spend it, you know, maybe that's something that you can do that you know will pay off in the long run. Don't try and make your goal too hard because otherwise you'll admit defeat. You know, if it's $10, whatever, just start small and build up, and compounding interest will make a huge difference over time. But I always say if you own a house, pay that off first. Try not to have credit card debt, and then try and do a bit of saving. And remember that there's a period of life you go through when you have your kids where it's difficult to do anything but pay for them. But there's a time when they do grow up and hopefully leave home, though it's less likely these days that they leave home. And then you can really start to concentrate on building up. So, you know, it's never too late is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, absolutely. And even getting those kids when they start getting their first little jobs to contribute to some of the household. And that might be, I can remember my 13-year-old number 3 child said to me, you know, can I have an iPhone? Can I have a mobile phone? And I was like, well, people with jobs get those sort of things. The next thing, she comes home with a permission slip from IGA, you know, at 13 years and 9 months, can we employ Ronnie Hawkins? And I'm like, okay, she saved up for her own phone. And I was like, well, out of all my kids, she's probably the most savvy with money. The others are catching up, but learning different ways. But just that was inbuilt in her, this desire, if I want that, all the other kids were getting these phones. And I'm like, you're only 13, for God's sake. No.
But you're doing two things. So I think you're achieving two things there. One, you're helping your own retirement saving because you didn't have to buy the phone. But secondly, you're doing her an enormous favour in teaching her the value of money. You know, I worry about kids who've had everything given to them. Then they move out and they don't even know about how to pay the electricity bill, or, you know, they've not had any education in how it works. So I think little things like that help them value money a lot more and will set them up in life. And that can start from an early age.
Absolutely. I found a ledger that was from my mum's work when she was she had a little boutique, and she used to have all the ledgers that Dad used to do all the accounting and finance, what have you. And I didn't really think my mum was that literate, which was one of the reasons why I did a commerce degree, financial literature, because Dad even would fill her car with petrol. You know, he was just one of those kind of guys. And I found at the back the other day when I was going through all the move, all the money that I had owed her when I was living at home and I'd left school and gone to uni. It was like, you know, my borrowing page, Lynn, and all the little $7 paid off here and 20. I didn't even remember that she was doing that. I remember just thinking, what a cheap. She's so cheap and so hard on me.
Yeah.
You know, but when I was looking through this thing, I was like, oh my God, that's why I'm so good with managing my money. I didn't even remember that. All I could
No.
remember was she was mean. She used to make me buy my own things when everyone else would buy their own things. But she was worrying about her money because Dad had died. And she was like worrying about saving. She didn't want to spend anything because she didn't know how to
Yeah.
manage it. When she died, we were astounded at how much money she had.
Yeah.
But it was a
It's
great lesson for me.
yeah. Yeah. It's we do have people who don't understand, that they can spend money as well, and that's the interesting,
Yeah, that's
so
the other side, right?
we spend all this time saving for retirement. Fabulous. We get there, and then sometimes people won't spend it because they're worried about running out. And that's the other part of the job we do is, I often joke that I'm encouraging them to spend their money, and especially on themselves, because I said the kids will spend it in 5 minutes once you're gone. So first of all, you have to, live a good life. You did all the hard work. Now it's time to enjoy your money. And there are people who don't understand that, especially if they've come from a hard background. Um, I've got some incredibly wealthy people who'll ring me up to ask me if they can buy something that, costs $1.50. And, so it's fascinating.
That's it. That's that abundance versus that the scarcity thing. Mum was born
Yeah.
in the 1920s, and
Yeah.
definitely, grew up her mother having, living through surviving the depression and then the wars,
Yeah.
and yeah, the money stories sitting there in the subconscious. I know that I had to fight to cut a whole lot of tomato, not leave a half a tomato in the fridge like my mum
Yeah.
used to. And it'd shrivel up, right? Because I'd forget about it. I'm going to cut the whole tomato, put it in the salad, right?
Yeah.
It's
No,
massive.
no, that's it is funny. I mean, we had the same thing with my dad. He was, I think, 6 during the Second World War, and in Austria, and they had no food. And so I always used to go, "Why is it always making us? You always had to eat everything off your plate." But he'd been, when they had no food and they starved, and it um, made him how he was about us eating all our food. So same with the money side. If you've been through the really hard times, it is difficult to not worry about running out. So, yeah, everyone's different. Everyone has different
And
backgrounds, different experiences, and yeah,
And
different
that
things that
money
motivate
story
them.
would come out in your discussions with people, helping them
Mm,
work out what that is that's getting in the way, where does this story come from
yeah,
that might be getting in my way of actually spending the money and enjoying my retirement, or
yeah,
saving the money, or whatever it might be.
yeah, whatever it is.
Where's that blockage?
Yeah, so I mean, that's, as I think I've alluded to, listening to people and building that trust is really important, and that's not something you do in 5 minutes. And so what after you've looked after someone for, a few years, the amount of information you know about them is very different from that first meeting. It takes time to gradually figure out what is important and what motivates people, and to hear their stories.
And that would help build their confidence too, in really knowing that you deeply understand them, and then
Yeah.
that then builds that confidence in the strategies that then are attached to the numbers.
Exactly right, because then people know you understand who they are and have listened to them, then when you explain, "We need to do this for this reason," even if they don't fully get it, they trust you and they know you're acting in their interests. And, my biggest goal in life is, it sounds a weird thing, but I get a lot of pleasure when later in life things go wrong for people because of the value we can add, in that they go, "With everything else I'm dealing in life, I don't have to worry about my finances because I know you've got my back, that you've done all the right things, you've prepared me, and you'll guide my family, you'll guide me through this." And it's one less worry for people. That
Yeah.
gives me a lot of pleasure. Um, Not what they're going through, but the fact
Mm.
that you can at least take one part of the worry away. So,
Yeah.
but it takes time to build that relationship.
Yeah, that would have been a game changer for Mum. You know, when Dad died, you know, he was only 62, and Mum
Yeah,
and Dad had just been planning their retirement, didn't get to live any of that stuff out. And she was really lost. And
yeah,
that was part of the reason why I did that commerce degree, was because I felt this need to become more like my dad. You know, he was, you
yeah,
know, he was so good as a shire clerk. He'd done that sort of, I think they called it, I can't remember, it was some sort of shire clerk thing, and it was all about accounting and management. It was like
yeah,
a little mini MBA. And I thought, I want to be like that so I can be that person in my mum's life. And it
yeah.
actually, yeah, if she'd had a financial planner or they'd set that up at the time, I didn't even know if wealth managers were around for people in those days.
No,
Certainly, yeah,
no.
sort of, it was like your
And
local banker.
yeah, exactly. And we do a lot of work with that,
Mm.
educating our clients. So it's not that we want to educate them so they have to do our job. They've obviously hired us to do
Mm.
that, but educate them to understand the decisions they're making and what they've got and how the options they've got. We work on really hard. Um, if you do have a couple, quite often one will do more of the finances, and not necessarily, the guy. It can be either, but one tends to. We work hard, if that's the case, on making sure we still have a really good relationship with the other person. In case anything goes wrong, they've got the trust already, and then we can help teach them. And again, I find that hugely rewarding when I have someone who's never done the finances, um, of gradually helping them, where they get to the point where they go, "Oh my God, I get it now, and I'm comfortable, and I'm no longer worried." That's very rewarding to help someone get to that stage. And you can only do that if you've built that trust, and built that relationship with them.
So, what's the top piece of advice you'd give for women who want to take control of their financial well-being and future freedom?
Start. So, and all the things I've said previously, get onto MoneySmart the government site, do a budget, work out what you're spending your money on, have a look at what your super is. Can I put a little bit extra into that each year? Have I got an offset account? Just start.
Now, I'm going to
And
finish off with some rapid fire questions, B, because I'm going to get you back on the show. I've written down a bunch of little things that I reckon we can dig deeper into, as always. So, see me, I get you on a podcast and
oh
there's no
no,
getting away, right? You're just so good with this.
I run really hard, but you always catch me.
I know where to find you, Belinda von Knoll. So, tell me very quickly, rapid fire, best advice you ever received.
Don't worry about the things you can't control.
Book or resource you recommend?
Money Smart and Barefoot Investor.
Most common myth about retirement planning?
What the actual dollar amount is that you have to have. It's all about you.
And what does financial freedom mean to Belinda von Knoll from Shadforth Financial Group?
Being able to look after my family without even thinking about it. Whatever they want, they get. And, I'm secure enough now that I can give it to them.
Belinda von Knoll, you're an inspiration, and you are not only technically good at what you do, but you have this beautiful care and passion to help people live their life of freedom and purpose aligned with their own unique selves. And it's just so obvious in the way you speak about your work that you love doing that. You love helping
I
people.
do.
So thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you, Lynn. I appreciate you giving me the time to do this. And I'm sorry I'm always so difficult to catch.
I know where to get you, don't you worry. And if you want to find Belinda, you'll find her on the Shadforth Financial website. She's also on the Business Women Australia directory and on LinkedIn. So there's all sorts of places you can connect with Belinda. And if you're thinking of joining Business Women Australia, what are you waiting for? We'd love for you to come together. It's executives, professionals, business owners, managers, women from every sector in every state in Australia, women on boards, those who aspire to be on boards, and emerging leaders. So if that sounds like you, we would love for you to join, and you'll find information on our website about joining, or reach out to me, Lynn Hawkins, and you'll find me on the website directory on LinkedIn, or lynn@businesswomenaustralia.com.au. So thank you so much, Belinda von Knoll. We'll have you back on the show. And we just got that one message to you, ladies. If you're thinking about when is the time to do it, no matter if you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, start doing your financial thinking and learning and journey right now.
Spot on, Lynn. Thank you.
I love it. Okay, thanks a lot for being on the show.
Thank you.
You have been listening to the Business Women Australia podcast show. We hope you've enjoyed today's episode and gained some valuable insights to empower you on your journey. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe to stay updated in our latest episodes. And if you're not already a member of Business Women Australia, what are you waiting for? Head to our website today and join so that you can connect with a thriving community of inspiring women across Australia. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next episode.